Quick Take McTick Productions presents a Quick Take McTick Productions, production. In association with Quick Take McTick Studios. Starring Quick Take McTick and several cows. Thoughts from the barn. The carbon tax. Quick Take McTick coming to you from Saskatchewan here today. And on this segment of Thoughts from the Barn, we're talking about the Canadian federal carbon tax. So right now in Canada, this guy and this guy have set a price on pollution at this much per ton. That means that anytime you drive one of these, or these, you have to pay a carbon tax on the fuel that you burn while driving. Whenever you turn anything on that requires this, you pay a carbon tax on it. But whenever you use things like this to have a hot shower, or this to heat your house so you can survive in our cold climate, you pay a carbon tax on it. And then just when you feel like you couldn't be taxed anymore, this guy and this guy charge you this on top of the carbon tax. That's right, you pay a sales tax on top of the carbon tax. It's a tax on a tax. And just when you think it couldn't get any worse, this guy and this guy are going to increase the carbon tax on April 1st by this much per ton, making it this much per ton. Is it convenient that they do this every April Fool's Day? It's like they're laughing at us. Then on top of this, for the carbon taxes here, they want to add this, which is a whole new set of regulations that's going to make using this, and this more expensive. Now, there's a whole bunch of people out there that say, hey, Quick Take, you get one of these to offset the carbon tax that you pay. You get more back than you put into it. But even this guy says that this year, houses alone across the prairie will experience a net loss with the rebate factored in of this much. And in 2030, will experience a loss with the rebate factored in up to this much when their carbon tax hits this much. Now, the problem with all these numbers that people keep throwing around and what the price of the carbon tax actually does is nobody takes into consideration how it affects the price of this. Now, from an ag perspective, we've always had to pay a carbon tax on stuff like this and this that we use to heat our shops, barns, and of course to dry grain with. And even on the electricity we use to run these things to keep these little guys warm. Do you believe this? So everybody's all happy that Bill C-234 passed the House of Commons and is headed to the Senate now, and hopefully will get approved and get royal assent. You know what Bill C-234 is, right? That's what exempts on-farm natural gas and propane use from the carbon tax. But don't forget that this lady right here, our federal ag minister, voted against it passing. Just remember that Bill C-234 isn't enough. Now, I say it's not enough because whenever we've got to hire these, or these to deliver to or take from the farm, they charge us a carbon tax because they're subject to a carbon tax on their fuel. Now remember, we need this to grow food in Canada, but any company that manufactures that in Canada gets charged this on the manufacturing process of that, and this gets passed on to us. And wherever we go to buy equipment that's made here in Canada that we use to farm, like these, this, or these. Any of the manufacturers in Canada that make these are charged a carbon tax on the manufacturing processes that they use to make these things, and then that cost gets passed down to us at the end of the line that are the purchasers of it. So we're still punished by the carbon tax in farming. But you as a consumer are unknowingly punished by the carbon tax as well, because whether you buy this, or require these, you have to pay for that business to have a building out of which they operate, or if they need to keep any of the products that you buy from them in a temperature-controlled environment, they pay a carbon tax on the energy they use to do so and then have to pass that cost on to you. And to get said products to any of these places in a country that's this size, you need to use these, and these. And they run on fossil fuels on which they pay a carbon tax, which they are going to pass the cost along to you. But by the end of 2023, $8 billion will have been collected from small business in Canada from the carbon tax, and only $35 million will be returned back through programs to said businesses. Do you know who gets to pay for the difference of that? You and me as customers, but nobody talks about this when we factor in the little quote saying you get back more than you put in. So we're punished unmercifully as Canadians for driving, heating our homes, and eating, all while being responsible for this much of global greenhouse gas emissions on a faulty national inventory report. Then we're told to, oh, hey, Blue Ball. Then we're told to switch over to unreliable energy sources like these or these, whose components are mostly controlled by these guys, who are also responsible for this much of global greenhouse gas emissions. And not only that, but they're busy with their fingers in our elections here in Canada. Meanwhile, this guy tells us that we need to do more, who is absolutely 100% addicted to traveling on one of these, which emits this much CO2 per hour, and takes a vacation to this place at the cost of this much to taxpayers, and is this year going to give himself a raise of this much money. This guy takes 277 climate change people kind to this country on a plane to the tune of this many dollars for a UN conference on climate change, and stays at a resort that has one of the worst environmental ratings in the area to the tune of $1,200 per room per night. And then, of course, there's this lady who spent this much money to fly to Northern Canada for a homecoming. She spent this much money to fly 32 people to Germany for a 4-day book fair, and then had an RCAF crew scramble a jet and fly this far so she could attend a 6-minute ceremony. And they do all of this while telling us that we need to reduce our carbon footprint and pay more carbon tax to solve these problems. Believe this, girl? Now, I know I mentioned this guy, but did you know this guy, this lady, and everybody else that sits in the room with them and behind them are all getting pay raises on April 1st, too? Happy April Fool's Day! Except it's really happening, I'm not joking. Ready for another night? This is Quick Tick Big Tick signing off, reminding you, if you really want to act like you've got Canadians' backs, stop flying around the world and then punishing us with a carbon tax. Catch you next time.